I wanted to give a little update about what my thoughts are on Vietnam so far. One thing that what came to mind is that it seems much cheaper, more poor than, for example, a lot of parts of Philippines and definitely Thailand. And what surprised me is the fact that things are cheaper than Philippines because Philippines is like a third world country where a lot of houses are just like concrete with metal roofs slapped on that are held together with ropes, things like this. Whereas Vietnam, it feels very, at least in Da Nang where I am, it's very touristy. There's some construction, but there's also a lot of hotels, a lot of nice restaurants that are very commercialized. But the rent here is much cheaper. The food here is also very cheap too, even in a lot of the stores and restaurants as well. And in my opinion, the food quality here that's Vietnamese is very poor. So probably get a lot of hate for that, but that's just my honest opinion. And there's good banh mi, but the thing is that the meat that they put inside is very low quality. And this is very consistent, something that I see across countries that have recently risen out of poverty, where the meat quality, they may have good sauces, they have good rice, their vegetables are good or whatever, they're not bad, but it's always the meat quality that is indicative of a poorer nation, in my opinion. It's always lacking. It's always feels like mystery meat, like chicken nuggets almost. And it's just, they use a lot of pork, which inherently is a lower quality meat than, say, beef. And yeah, even when a lot of times they do have beef, it's like chewy and it's just not very good quality. And when I was, for example, in Texas, in Houston, there's a huge Vietnamese population there, and the banh mi's there were very good. Maybe I could get them for $4 or $5 in Houston. Here they're like $1, sometimes less. And but the meat quality here in general is much poorer. I did have a good one that had roast pork in it, but again, that's very common, roast pork in Thailand, Philippines, here as well. But roast pork, it does at the end of the day. It has that sort of crispy skin, which is at the end of the day not extremely healthy, and it's a little unhealthy. It's greasy, if that's the right word. And then the meat quality part is fine. It has some meat, but then there's also 50% fat too. A large indicator of high quality food is, in my opinion, the leanness of it. If it's mostly fat, that's indicative of it being lower quality. Also, you can disagree if you think so, but I think in general, how much fat they have in their meat tells me the quality. Because really, I've noticed people will say different countries are cheaper, but I noticed if you adjust for grams of protein in the meal, that it's much closer than people realize, if not the same. A lot of times, if I'm in China, for example, people say, oh, you can get a dish for so cheap, but the amount of protein in that dish is just so small. And if I had to buy just like the meat and kept buying it until I had the same that would be in an American dish, it would be about the same price. In my opinion, that's like one of the lean meat is like the equalizer across countries for purchase power parity. And China as well. Chinese people are very nationalistic. Not everyone loves the government, but everyone loves their country. They're very proud. I don't want to, and they're very proud of their food too. They all ask me, "Oh, what do you think about Chinese food?" Like, I might get flack. I know I'll get flack for this too, because they're so biased towards their own country and nationalistic, which a lot of countries are, but Chinese especially, which has its advantages, of course, but it turns me off. I don't like any sort of bias. And in my opinion, their food quality is just very poor. And it's because they had a huge famine. For example, people think that eating cats and dogs is part of the culture. Oh, it's just how different people do things. No, they didn't do that until the famine, which was caused by communism. And I'll admit their authoritarian regime has had a lot of benefits for them too, as well as downsides, which you can name. But when they went full out communist under, I believe it was Mao, they had that huge famine, and a lot of rural parts of the country didn't have enough food, and millions of people were dying, and they ate anything and everything. And that's how the food culture in China has developed. That's why they eat such strange things to many other people, different types of animals, different parts of the animals. A lot of times they might cook things in hot pot, boil them, etc., whatever it is. And it's because their food culture developed in a deprived state of famine, and they're forced to do what they can to scavenge and eat whatever they can. Yeah, that's just my opinion on things. I go to a banh mi place here in Vietnam, and the meat qualities, they just all look like very poor mystery meats, things you'd get in a school cafeteria, So I end up just eating a lot of Western food, which is not the case in the Philippines, not the case in Thailand. They have very good street food. Philippines, especially their roast pork is very high quality. So that's just my take on things. In addition, the person in the lobby here, a lot of times with reception, I'll say something and they'll just say, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah," as if they understand, but they don't. Like they start doing something completely the opposite. It's a little frustrating. I'm fine if you don't understand English. I should be speaking Vietnamese here, right? But don't say that you understand and then just start doing something. And I'm like, whoa, wait, that is not what I asked. It's clear that they're just saying yes because one person in particular, she just constantly will say yes before I even got my sentence out. So there's no way she could even understand what I'm saying. I'll be like, "Hey, excuse me, do you have?" She's like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah." And I'm like trying to get my sentence out, and she's interrupting me with saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." And it's very annoying, to be honest. And I spoke about this before, how in a corporate vernacular, corporate culture, how the best example of why people who have everything in finance, that they tick all the boxes but still aren't able to just get that job. And it comes down to a lot of the cultural aspect. And I said Indians are in many ways are the opposite, and it's because they interrupt a lot and do the same. I'll be speaking with someone networking, and they'll be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I'm like, I haven't even. I've said one word. I've said half a word. I'm like, why are you nodding like affirmatively when I'm saying? And then you're just interrupting me. And it's very annoying. Every time I'm on a thought process speaking, my train of thought, I start it, and then I just get interrupted. We go, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I understand. And I'm like, I didn't even say anything yet. And you just disrupted my entire flow. This is a little frustration of different cultural things, I guess. Most people in Vietnam have not been doing that to me here, so maybe it's just a per person thing, but it's just more common in certain places like India. I'm not sure. And people will probably get angry at me and say, "Hey, you go to other countries, why you hate on other cultures, the way they do things." And I think everyone, that's actually what I do when I go abroad is I look at cultures and I take what's good and I leave what's bad. American culture isn't perfect. It has its critiques, but the thing is that when you grow up in a culture, the bad things, you don't notice them because you're used to them. So you're not going to be as inclined to critique them or get frustrated by them. But when you go to other places, the benefits are, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's good. So it's incrementally beneficial. But the things that are negative, that you're like, why would you do things this way? It has a much stronger impact because it's, for one, negative emotions are stronger than positive. For example, I believe it was Larry Bird that said, he was motivated not to win, but he wasn't motivated to win, but he was motivated not lose because the feeling of losing was twice as bad, which has been proven in scientific studies about the brain response, etc. And then in addition to that, it's just frustrating when you're used to a certain thing and then someone doesn't do that, and it's because they're doing things in a worse process. It's very frustrating to people, which is why there's that cultural shock and people have trouble adjusting to new countries even if the culture in the country they're going to isn't really worse. It could be better than their home country if we're ranking cultures, but it's just there's differences in each, and the bad things in your own you don't notice, but the bad things in a new culture really frustrate you, and that happens anywhere and everywhere. So that's my personal opinion on it, as well as based on data points I've gathered from things I've seen and my observations. So obviously don't take that as me saying one is better than the other, but I do want to be honest about my frustrations and critiques going abroad. I think that's what's useful about me going to different places. And for you sitting wherever you are watching this, you can understand what the frustrations may be. So you can say, hey, that I don't think that's going to bother me, and whatever it may be. And some examples of like pauses that I've taken away is when I've lived with multiple Asian roommates, and when I go back to the US and just in general, even I have Asian roommates, and I'll be like, hey, we should probably not have shoes on in the room or in the apartment. If you are strongly against that, I'm not going to put up a fight with that, but I think it's just like a better way to do things. It's cleaner and it's more pleasant for everyone. It's just an obvious positive from Asian culture that doesn't exist in American culture. And every time they're like, yeah, sure. I've even had that with Asian roommates where they weren't planning on doing that as well. You give and you take, but this is my impression so far about Vietnamese food, just a few interactions that I've had as well. Overall, it's a very beautiful landscape here. People seem very nice and friendly. which is good, but they're not necessarily overly want to become your best friend, but just polite in general. Probably more friendly than Japan, but not as, I would say in Philippines, there's a lot of people that I talk to that genuinely seem like they want to become my friend, which is a little interesting, which has made a very nice experience. But yeah, just a little update on my comparison of different countries, my thoughts on the food. This tends to happen. People romanticize other food from other places and say, oh, it's so good here. It's so good. This food is so good. But in reality, a lot of immigrants go to America and they build their own food restaurants there, but they're using much higher quality ingredients. They have to meet higher standards. They may be using more processed ingredients with pesticides and whatnot. So it may be maybe cooking with seed oils. I don't know. So it may be more unhealthy for our bodies in the process, but they will have higher quality ingredients in terms of leaner meats and higher quality meats, things like this. Really, that's the main one. For example, I've heard of many Koreans say that the Korean food in America is now better than the Korean food in Korea. And I think that's the case for a lot of countries, despite people not wanting to admit it because they want to feel proud of their home country or feel a sense of exclusion. Oh, no, I know this food in this country. I've been there and it's really good. But yeah, in my opinion, the best Thai food I had wasn't in Thailand. It was in New York. Just the way it is. And I don't know if that's just my taste that I'm accustomed to, but I do genuinely think that the food quality is higher. Like the chicken in a Penang chicken that I had in America in New York was better than the Penang chicken curry that I had in Thailand. And bubble tea in Thailand, garbage. Bubble tea is definitely better in the US. Hate me if you want.